is loving, caring, sharing.
This is a good cigar. How about you, Scotty?
Good very good. Yeah, very good.
How about you, Pat?
That's good. I finally got it lit.
Yeah, all right, good. We finally got things together here. That's right. It's Friday night. That means it's one thing and one thing only. It's loving, caring, and sharing. Yes, Mark Mercer's Loving, Caring, and Sharing here on North Star Radio. Well, I've been looking forward to this for a while. Of course, joining me now here at Loving, Caring, Sharing Studios is Pat Gillen. How are you tonight, Pat?
I'm great, Mark.
I'm glad you could make it over. I know you had a busy week and stuff, and I'm glad you took time out from your schedule and your evening home with your family to be able to be with us. And I guess I should give a little bit of a background so you guys have an idea. Who's Pat Gillen? Who is this guy? You guys all know that I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous back in August of 1981. I ended up in a rehab. One of the first guys to reach out to me was this guy named Bobby Carr, and I told him I was going to go to rehab and I didn't need to go to no AA meetings or nothing, but thanks for calling anyway. And when I hung up on him, my old man said, I'm going to have to call Pat Gillen. And because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And what happened was I did my 28 days at Fairmount Institute. I got out. I went to a couple of meetings, and then I went to this meeting this one night over at North Penn Hospital. Mm-hmm. And comes this guy. It's a guy my age, and he's all 5'2", and he's surrounded by guys that are 6'6", 6'5". He's got Frank. He's got all these guys with him, these goons, and they were Pat's pigeons. And my dad introduced me. My dad had been in AA for a few years at that time, and he said, I think you ought to meet Pat. Pat's he's got solid sobriety. He got sober when he was 16 and
17.
What?
17.
17? Okay. And anyway, he said you should hook up with this guy. And I remember talking to Pat after the meeting. He gave me his phone number, and for the next 5 years, I lived in Pat's pocket. And my introduction to AA was Pat saying, I want you standing out on the corner for me tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and I'll pick you up and we're going to a meeting. And I was so gone at that time, I didn't have any resistance left, that I'd be standing there, it'd be pouring rain, and he'd pull up in his little, didn't you have that little white Hornet back then?
Oh, yeah.
The mustache rise 5 cents.
Yeah, I remember. You remember that? And the windshield wipers, when you let off, you had to floor it so they would go. When you let off the gas, they would stop.
Yeah.
It ran on some kind of vacuum system.
Yeah, typical alcoholic's car. It was great. Anyway, so Pat took me to meetings. Now, in AA, there's a few guidelines. There's things that like, what do you call? They're like the norm. When you start going to AA meetings, they recommend strongly that you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Pat took me to 273 meetings in 90 days.
Oh, yeah, we went all the time.
We went all the time. Every night. On Fridays, we'd hit one at supper. We'd go to the 8:30. We'd hit the midnight, and then sometimes we'd have enough coffee in us by then. We'd go into a 2 o'clock in the morning meeting. We wouldn't get home till like 3 o'clock, and then there was all those times at Friendlies afterwards. We'd be up till the wee hours, and then the next day he'd call me on the phone and say, "Come on, we're going to a new meeting." I'm like, "Oh man, I haven't even had breakfast." That's all right. We'll eat on the way, and we'd meet up. We take off. We go to a meeting at noon. We go to one at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We hit one at dinner. Somewhere in the middle, we'd eat some food while we're drinking all this coffee. And so the weekends were like meetings we doubled up on like crazy. Now, a couple things I want to make clear here. And that is that what you're going to hear tonight are the opinions of Pat Gillen and myself. We're both members of AA, but what we're going to talk about tonight does not necessarily reflect the opinions of Alcoholics Anonymous at all. We're just two guys that got sober in AA, and I wanted to have Pat on here because, first of all, he's been one of my oldest friends. I've always just loved him to death, and even in the beginting, like I liked him right away. We just hit it off. I don't know, maybe just Irish or whatever, but we hit it off right away. And Pat and I have a similar senses of humor, like getting in the same kind of mischief and pranking on people.
That would be a warped sense of humor. Is that right?
Yes, that'd be
very
very warped.
Very.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, that's right. He's very warped. And so anyway. When you go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and they bring the meeting to order, one of the first things they read is the AA preamble, and I'm going to read. Do you know it by memory by now? 37 years later.
Yeah, but I don't want to stumble over.
Okay, all right. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contribution. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. All right. Now, having read that, what I want to do is I want to do what when you go to an AA meeting, it's a speaker discussion meeting. Typically what happens is that the chairman reads all this literature and stuff. Now it's so much literature, it's like volumes. It takes like 10 minutes to get through all the junk they talk about, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
They
go on and on.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, back when we got sober, you went to a meeting, you sat down, they read stuff, it took about 90 seconds. Now it takes like 9 minutes for them to go all this stuff. And then they do this, they would always ask, usually at the coffee break, after the coffee break's over, they'd say, has anybody here got 90 days of sobriety? And then that'd be it. There wouldn't be like this whole thing. All right, has anybody here got 91 days of sobriety? Anyone got 92 days of sobriety? Anybody got 3 days of sobriety? They do this ridiculous nonsense now of like, we got to make sure we recognize everybody that's got, 5 breaths of sobriety. And, of course, meanwhile, guys are sitting there with 20, 30, 40 years of sobriety. They're ignoring them. They'll never get to them. And we don't care about them. We want to about the guy with a day and a half of sobriety. Anyway, so then what would happen is they would, the chairman, in this case, if this were an AA meeting, I'd be the chairman, and of course would introduce the speaker, and then the speaker would have, usually about 25 minutes to tell his whole story. And if he went over 25 minutes, usually the chairman nudges him, gives him a hard time. They start busting on him, and he's got to shut up. So telling your whole life story in 25 minutes, Pat and I got pretty good at. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the course of a guy's life, especially when you've been sober, 6 times longer than you drank. So there's not just the drinking. There's all that's happened since you got sober, and sobriety in itself is a trip, And anyway, so Patrick has joined us here tonight, very graciously, I might add. How's that cigar, by the way?
It's very good. My mouth tastes like
an ashtray.
Yeah,
that's what we're shooting for.
It's doing its job.
Just want to make sure. Can I have those matches? Anyway, Pat, what I do, what I've done with Love and Caring Sharing, really, is I've always enjoyed interviewing people, because what I find is there's people that I've come across, the people that I've interviewed in the past, guys like Bill Lumen, Rodney Smith, Connie Tedford, Steve DeLoach, my MOA. They all have passions. There's things about their lives that they're passionate about. All right, you and me, we have a common denominator of what happened in our lives when we were younger. And so I've kind of more or less modeled what I do by what happens in an AA meeting, where the guy just tells a story. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to simply tell everybody your story from the very beginning, from way back when you grew, from the day you were born.
Man, that's way back.
That's way back. Just pretend we're at an AA meeting and let her go.
Well, it all depends sometimes at AA meetings. Depends what kind of meeting it is.
Right.
I mean, if it's if you're an anniversary speaker, you're not going to tell a 40-minute drunkalogue with all the crazy stuff you did.
Right. Hopefully.
You're going to share some.
You get some guys like Roofer Sam. He'll tell you 99 minutes of drunk.
Yeah. Well, you want to share some hope with them. Then if you're in a prison, if you're in Montgomery County Prison, you'll share a lot. That's all they're going to relate to, is drinking and drugging and all the things you did.
Right.
Normally, when I speak at an AA meeting now, I'll usually talk about my drinking. I usually don't go back to my childhood a lot of times, because you can get lost there. If you only got 25 minutes, you're.
Yeah.
I was at a meeting one time. The meeting started at 8, and the meeting was over at 9. It was 5 and 9. The speaker, he was just on fire. He wouldn't shut up, and he was still drunk at 5 and 9. And he says, he says, I'm so excited here. I could talk to the cows come home. Yeah. And some old guy yells from the back, they've been home for about a half an hour. So you got to watch that. You don't get stuck in that drunkalogue. But I'll talk about my childhood. I don't believe that my childhood has any direct result to me becoming an alcoholic.
Right.
I think that the environment, I grew up in a family of alcoholics. My father was an alcoholic, and I don't believe my mother was an alcoholic. I think she was a problem drinker.
Right.
Because she had stopped drinking one time and had no problem stop drinking. My father could not stop drinking. He was a member of AA also.
Rhinestone.
No, Rhinestone's Bobby's dad.
Oh, that's right, Bobby's dad. What am I saying?
He was the Gill.
Yeah, he was the Gill.
Yeah.
That's right. What am I thinking?
Yeah, what a name.
It's been so, Gill.
But I don't know. Growing up, I grew up. I had an older brother and an older sister.
Where were you born again?
We were in Philadelphia. I was born in Einstein Hospital.
Okay.
We lived in a row house in West Oak Lane in Philadelphia until 1969.
I see. I forgot that. I for some reason thought that you grew up in Ambler all those years.
Nah, 1969. I guess I was 11 years old. We moved to Ambler.
Okay.
West Oak Lane was a bad neighborhood at the time. In the 60s, the early 60s, it was a great neighborhood to grow up in. By the end of 69, there was racial riots.
Oh yeah, Philadelphia was coming unglued.
Yeah, it was unglued, and we wanted to get out of there. And my mother's boyfriend, Lou, who I guess he'd lived with us at that time. He moved us out into a single home in Ambler, and that was I think I was in 4th grade. And moving from there to Ambler was a big change. You know, when you're that age, I think it's like traumatic. You go to a new school, new friends.
Sure.
And right away, I fell in with the kids in school that like to fight and, you know, make that concoctions up over the weekend where you would get the mayonnaise jar and you go to the liquor cabinet and you pour like
10 different things.
Oh, and it was nasty.
Yeah,
it was
awful.
like drinking lighter fluid or gasoline. You know, but you know, we'd sit there and sip it, and it was nasty to get down. But we would drink that, and we drank to get drunk and get silly. You know, goofy. We'd go peek in people's windows or run around the neighborhood and be goofy.
Right.
As kids, it grew into like drinking on the weekends with the guys on the corner. We hung out at a playground.
Oh yeah.
And there was a couple places, and I think at that time we were smoking pot and drinking, and I think the first time I ever got in trouble for drinking and drugging was at my 7th grade dance.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I ended up overdosing on a combination of alcohol and Quaaludes.
You OD'd in 7th grade.
Yeah, I ended up at Abington Hospital getting my stomach pumped and completely out of it. And it's funny, my friend Alan, who was with me that night, he's 27 years sober, Alan.
Alan?
Yeah, I don't know if you know. Not that, you're thinking of another Alan.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking of the Alan I knew back when I was working for Gross and Quaid.
No, not that Alan.
Okay.
But this guy, and I think I spoke a few months ago, and I invited him to come down. He lives up past Allentown. He came down, and
nice.
we're friends. I think most of the people, you know, I don't know if any of them are listening tonight, most of the people I hung with were of the alcoholic drug addict nature.
Birds of a feather.
Most of them are either in the fellowship today or
dead.
Dead.
Yeah.
A lot of them are dead.
Right.
And the rest of them, they're still out there trying to figure this thing out.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
experimenting.
You know, my alcoholism went very rapidly. You know, most people, you know, can drink for 20, 30 years.
Right.
You know, from the age of 13.
Like our old men.
Yeah.
They drank for like forever.
Well, my father, he came to AA in 1951.
Is that right?
Yeah, he went, but he didn't get sober until 1977.
Right, okay.
So it was a lot of years.
That's when my dad came in.
Yeah, it was a lot of years of in and out with my father.
Right.
But for me, from 13 to 17 was just full of drinking, drugging, and I never felt like I fit in. Even though I may have shown or people thought that I felt. I don't know what people really thought about me.
Right.
You know, but you know, the people I hung with, we drank. My friends down the street, his mom would get us beer, and we would drink in his basement. Every weekend was kind of looking for somewhere to go.
Right.
We used to have parties on our own, get a keg of beer, and you know, it turned into like weekend drinking, turned into Monday night drinking, turned into Tuesday night drinking. I spent.
And this is like in junior high.
Yeah, well, and I was pulled out of school in junior high. I ended up spending 11 months in a place called St. Gabriel's Hall.
You were at St. Gabe's.
Yeah, I was there for 11.
Nice place.
You know what? I look back on it now. I hated it when I was there, but you know what? I think it really enhanced what was going on with me. Today, I use some of the tools that I learned when I was there, believe it or not.
Really? Like what?
I think it gave me some kind of discipline in my life.
Really?
You know, really, yeah,
because I've heard of guys that went to St. Gabe's that came out and they're like, man, it was a nightmare. You'd think it would have been a wake-up call for some guys.
Yeah, well, it was a wake-up call because I think, you know, I got out of there, you know, I was really lost at that time. I couldn't put months or years together.
Right.
It seemed like something that seemed like 3 weeks ago was actually a year ago. And something that was a year ago seemed like last week.
It was all discombobulated.
Yeah, my time frame. And I'm looking back now, I got this little statue. I got like first awards when I was in there for, you know, when I first went there, you know, I was the kid getting in trouble every day.
Is that right?
And I learned real quick, if you don't get in trouble and you kind of learn and keep this, they don't bug you too much. You know what I mean? So I ended up getting like these, I forget what they called it, some kind of awards they had.
Like a
But I got
merit?
this little, yeah, it was like a merit award. If you got like But it said my grade average was like 96.8 or 94.5.
Really?
And I got first honors or whatever. But you had to get it in everything. And I never got the first honors because I never could be disciplined enough to stay out of trouble. Either fist fighting or doing something.
Okay.
Or smoking or,
breaking some kind of rule.
Some kind of rule. But I looked at that statue, and it was the trophy that I have, and it's from 1975.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was 1974, so it was only like that next year I got sober.
Right.
So I got out of there in September in 75 I got out of there, and a year later I was in AA. So it was like April of 75, and by April of 76 I was sober.
How did that happen?
I think the whole transition of when I got back home, when they take you out of school for a year, I look back now, I felt out of place.
Right.
All the guys I hung with and everything, and all the girls I hung with, kind of moved on for that year, and I was kind of like doing my thing there. I didn't feel like I fitted in when I came back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started drinking on a daily basis at that point, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
And it just took off. And I look back now, I didn't realize that I was drinking every day. I wasn't really thinking about it, but I just drank every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where, when I drank, I was like always getting in trouble. And most of the people that know me,
Mm-hmm.
I was always doing something stupid when I was drunk. Or
Stealing stuff.
Starting a fire, starting trash cans, on fire, whatever, stealing a car,
All
doing
right.
something stupid.
Peeping Tom, all that stuff.
Yeah, public drunkenness, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget, I got locked up, I think, I'm trying to remember, it was for stealing a car.
Okay.
And it was stealing a car in... it was a 68 Rambler. And it was a girl I went to school with. And when I was in the reform school,
Mm-hmm.
I ran away with this guy named Tom Ryan from Scranton. I've been trying to find him. I can't find him. But
Have you looked up for him on Facebook?
yeah, I looked for him all over. But Tom and I decided one night we were going to run away. So you could run around this, I don't know what to call it. They had like a courtyard at nighttime.
Yeah.
And we were running around. I said, I'm tired of this place. He said, I am too. And I said, well, when we come to this corner where you go around the corner, there was a gate there.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we're going to keep running through the gate, cross Pauling Road, and down into the woods. And that's what we did.
You ran away.
We ran away. So we run away, right? So it was almost like one of these movies, like Vietnam movies.
All
We're
right.
like down in a creek and we're going on water, and we're like we think we're going to hide our tracks because we think they're going to have like hound dogs.
Yeah, they'll be on you any minute now.
But they did have skipper chasers. They would chase you right away. There'd be like 10 people after you.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we ran, and we ended up in this apartment complex,
Mm-hmm.
and we ended up sleeping in a tree fort.
Oh, yeah?
And we woke up in the morning in this tree fort. It was in some yard in, I think, Pleasant something, right in Phoenixville. And he says, well, let's steal a car.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I'm looking for a car with keys. The only cars I ever stole always had keys in them.
Right.
Right? So
No hot wiring.
yeah, we always stole one. We look for a car with keys. So he goes, oh, I know what kind of car. So he found an American Motors car,
Mm-hmm.
pulled the ignition, and showed me with a paper clip how he started the engine, and we drove away.
Okay.
So here's these two 16-year-old kids driving his car.
Right.
And we drove to Ambler. And we get home, and I'm telling my brother's at the house, and my mother was...
Tommy.
Yeah, my brother was always working, and I said, we ran away, and he said, yeah, I know, they've been here looking for you.
Oh, really?
I said, well, what should we do? I didn't know what to do, and
Right.
we ended up turning ourselves in.
Oh, okay.
And when you turned yourself in, they weren't very nice to you when they got you back there.
Yeah, I'll bet.
They usually put a whooping on you.
Really?
And they had a thing called line.
Yeah.
That was your punishment. You had to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
So they had like these bricks that stuck out of the block, cinder block that stuck out of the wall, and they were about 6 block high.
Yeah.
And you had to stand on there. So you were standing there like a statue in a home.
Oh, really?
Like them go in the homes and they got those armored statues on the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
You couldn't talk or nothing. You just had to stand there for like 2-3 weeks.
Like an idiot.
Yeah, you had to stand there when you ate. The only time you got to sit down was when you went to school or went to bed.
Cheese and crackers for hours.
So for weeks. You
That
did it
had
all
to
day
kill
long.
ya.
And you couldn't ask to go to the bathroom.
Oh, come
If
on.
you asked to go to the bathroom, they made you late 20 minutes earlier. So you had to ask 20 minutes in advance when you had to go to bed. You had to figure that out. So you really
It's torture. Too bad they still don't have that today.
It's funny. One of the guys, they called them prefects. The guys that would
Look over you.
they were like the guards at nighttime or in the daytime.
Oh, okay.
And I was on a fraternity. It was the only fraternity I ever belonged to. I was in the Kappa fraternity, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm in this fraternity now, which I guess I could say I was in a fraternity. Tell my friends out there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I was in Kappa fraternity, and the one guy that was like the stayed there was he was just very violent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he didn't know how to take care of kids. Like if you said something wrong, he'd backhand you or throw you to the ground or kick you. He was like a karate guy. So
Nice guy.
Yeah, real nice guy.
So they punching bags walking all over the place.
But about 10 years ago, my daughter wrote an essay, and it was approved by the Knights of Columbus, and she won some award. And we had to go to this church, and they had a ceremony. And they had the Knights of Columbus. This guy's the Knights of Columbus. And I hadn't seen this guy in 25 years.
Yeah, right.
I go down, and we're sitting at this breakfast, and I'm looking across, and I knew who he was.
Really?
But he didn't know who I was.
So
and he goes to say, "That's nice. Your daughter won that award." And he goes to say his name. I said, "I know who you are. Your name's Chuck, right?" And I said his last name, and he said, "Yeah, how do you know that?" And I said, "From St. Gabriel's Hall, 1974."
Really?
And he looked at me and he said, "I'm sorry if I ever did anything to harm you."
Really?
Yeah, he made amends right away because he knew. I guess he knew that he was a mean dude when he worked there.
How about that, though?
Yeah, but he made amends.
I mean,
away.
that's a rare thing.
Yes, yeah, but he knew. His eyes got real big when I said, "I know you're from there." That was the last place he thought he was going to know somebody.
I'll never forget you.
Oh no. So, but you know, I went there and I believe, you know, I hated the whole time I was there, but a lot of stuff early on, it gave me some kind of discipline in life. It really did. They taught me to speak when I was supposed to spoken to and shut up when I was supposed to shut up.
Right.
So I kind of retained some of that.
A little bit of manners.
Yeah, I got out of there and I don't know, my drinking just took off.
Mm-hmm.
Now I knew how to steal these American Motors cars, which was nice.
Handy for later.
So whenever we were drunk and wanted to drive
State
somewhere,
police are chasing
you know,
you.
I would just go steal a car. And I can't tell you how many American Motors cars I stole.
Oh, yeah, because they were everywhere back then.
Yeah, you could just
Gremlins and everything.
So one of the last times I stole this girl's car that I went to school with.
Is that why I had a Rambler when I met you?
No. Yeah, that was like a God thing. I guess he was trying to tell me something. But we stole this old '68 Rambler, and me and a guy named John. Me and John stole this Rambler. We're all drunk, and we're driving down Center City, and we're driving all around, and he's driving, I'm driving, and it's like 3 a.m. We come up to this stoplight, and across the other intersection's a cop pointing towards me, and I'm pointing towards him. And I'm looking at the sign.
Philly cop?
Yeah. And the sign says no left turn.
Right.
And John says, "You got to make a left turn. You're in the left turn lane." You know, I guess, you know, there's a prime example. Somebody had, not ADD, but what's that when you see things backwards?
Yeah, dyslexic.
He was dyslexic, I guess. So I'm making the left. And then I'm making the left. I'm thinking, that sign definitely says do not make this left. Now, there's a cop on the other side of the intersection.
Yeah, right, watching this.
So he had no choice but to put the lights on.
Yeah.
So they put the lights on, they chase us.
Right.
So now I take off.
Okay.
And I think I'm Speed Racer in my '68 Rambler.
Right.
So I'm flying down the road and I'm driving.
And he's in a Plymouth with a 440.
Oh, yeah, they're just chasing me down the road, right?
Right.
So finally we come down this one street after about 3-4 miles through the city, and they've got the road blocked with 2 cars with the lights over the hoods. And so I jammed the car into reverse and hear all this grinding, and the car came to a stop. And the cop came up, and the window was down about 8 inches. Yeah. And he pulled me through the window. Didn't even open the car door. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And then they took...
They keyholed you.
Oh, yeah. Then they took me... After me and John, they took us and they handcuffed us back to back.
Oh, jeez.
Throw us in this paddy wagon laying down.
All right.
And so now they're taking us to the police station, but it must have took about an hour and a half to get us there. Because what they do, they go about 60 miles an hour and jam the brakes on it. Him and I would slide and bash our heads on the back of the pack. Then they take off and we slide back down. They were having a good old time with us back there, right?
They could get away with it. This is during Rizzler years.
Yeah. Well, from there, I end up in this rehab.
Okay.
There's this drug rehab called Allenwood, White Deer Run in Allenwood, Pennsylvania.
That's a famous rehab.
Yeah, now it's pretty big now.
Isn't that where Dick
Flanagan, who he passed away a few years ago, he had almost 50 years sobriety.
He helped a lot of people.
He got sober at Young Men's in the late 50s.
Young Men's was an AA group down in the city that hardcore guys got sober at.
He got sober the year that I was born, 1958.
Is that right?
Yeah, because he said, the year I was 17, he celebrated his 17th anniversary. The year I was in the rehab.
I never met him, but I always heard stories about him.
Great guy. You know, he was crazy as could be, but he loved Alcoholics Anonymous and loved recovery because when we got to the rehab, now I'm going back in the 70s. You can't. I've been up there since, but you can't do some of the stuff they did then. They had like a little graveyard, and where it wasn't a graveyard, it was like a plot of land with these little crosses on there, and there was numbers on them like 075, 1521. They were patients that had left there since 1971 to then that died, and one of them was his son.
Really?
High on drugs and alcohol, rolled into a bonfire and burned to death.
Really?
Yeah. So one of it, so he had an interest in this grave, and he would take it through the graveyard. And I guess they were, I'm a physical I'm a physical learner or visual learner, so I got to see things visually.
Right.
And it kind of impressed me, that like these people really were here, and they're people that aren't here anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And I spent 60 some days there. Got sober.
Right.
They said, we think you should relocate. There was a guy I sponsored, Charlie. Charlie and I our cabins were across from each other.
Oh, yeah.
And I was 17, Charlie was 19. We were both from Montgomery County. He was from Lansdale, I was from Ambler.
Right.
We weren't allowed to talk.
What,
we
to each other?
Yeah, because we were from Montgomery County. me
Oh,
and
okay.
Charlie.
Trouble.
So
yeah.
I went through there, and I got out, and I moved to Williamsport, Pennsylvania. That was like the relocation program. So I'm living with this guy, Steve, for about...
What, they had like a halfway house there or something?
Nah, they just had a lot of guys had apartments, and it was like a sober town almost.
Is that right?
So this one building, there was like 12 apartments in it, and I'm going to say 9 of them were people in AA.
Oh, okay.
So this guy, Steve, he takes me in his apartment when I first got out, and I'm sleeping on his floor in a sleeping bag, and I remember feeling kind of ungrateful. I'm thinking, he ought to give me the bed, and he should be sleeping on the floor. I'm the new guy, but it
Right.
didn't work like that.
Yeah. Little
By the
cocky.
end of the month, I had an apartment down the hall by myself. I got on welfare or whatever, and got some money, food stamps.
Right.
And I had this apartment down the hall, and by the end of the month, I had 2 new guys living with me, sleeping on my floor.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of...
So you're the top dog.
I'm the top dog. But somewhere along the line, I thought I was too young to be an alcoholic.
Right.
You know what I mean? I heard all these things. I was going to meetings. There was a lot of young people in AA then in Williamsport, but I thought, this isn't for me. I think I can drink again. I started thinking about drinking. And I got on a bus. I had a sponsor, AA sponsor, a young guy named Tony.
Yeah.
And we went and we called my mom one night. I was sober. I was there about a month before I left. And
Right.
the first 2 weeks there, I call her. And I was just so glad to not be drinking and drugging anymore and to be clear behind it. And I remember calling my mom and I'm telling her I'm sober and this, and she must have been ecstatic, because I always thought she liked to stay up late at night, because I would come by the house at 2, 3 in the morning. She'd be walking back and forth in the living room. I just thought she had insomnia, couldn't sleep. I never realized she was waiting for me to come home or if I was going to come home.
Okay.
15, 16 years old. But I call her and I tell her, I'm sober, and she's just, what can I do for you? And can I send you money? And my sponsor's on the other on the other line of the phone, shake his head. Oh, no, you don't need any money. Do you need this? No, he's telling you. So I had like my first AA resentment, against this guy. 'Cause,
Right.
I wanted whatever I could get.
Yeah.
Between there and then, I end up drunk. End up getting on a bus out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania.
Right.
And the bus headed down the road, and we switched over in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. And
Where are you going? Back to Ambler?
I'm going back to Am. I'm going to go home. Now, I don't know if I'm going to drink or what I'm going to do, but I'm just tired of being there.
Right.
And I got my little fold-up suitcase, and I got my AA coin in my pocket, and I got some AA literature. And
How long were you sober?
100-some days. Probably the longest I'd ever been sober since the age of 11, 12 years old.
Okay.
100-some days without a drink or a drug.
Right.
And the bus switched there, and I'm going to go take it back a little bit. This is when a cup of coffee was 10 cents.
Right. yeah.
Yeah, a cup of coffee was 10 cents. So I drank a cup of coffee in this little diner where the bus stop was at.
Right. Gallon of gas was like 55 cents.
Yeah, but I go to the phone. I'm going to call somebody. I'm going to call for help. So I dial the phone. It's an old dial receiver.
Right.
And just as it gets to the last number, I hang the phone up. I can't make the call.
No.
And I was going to ask for help. Like, I don't know what to do here. I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And I got on the bus, and no sooner the bus pulled out, guy behind me says, "You want a drink?" Now,
An answer to prayer.
Oh, man.
so I turn around. This guy's got a quart of King's Port, or I don't know what the heck it was.
Oh, good stuff.
So I go and I sit next to this guy, and I'm sitting there, and he hands me the bottle. I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, I haven't had a drink in 100-some days, and I'm heading home, and
Right.
and I looked at the guy, and I said, I don't know if I should drink this. I said, I just got out of a drug rehab. He goes, so did I.
Oh, yeah?
So,
Oh, man.
so I made a friend right away. Well, I really believe this guy, he was in a mental institution. He wasn't in a rehab.
Yeah,
Because he knew
What
nothing.
a great friend. That's just great.
I'm telling you, God really has a sense of humor, doesn't he? So I'm sitting there next to this guy, and he knows nothing about the 12 steps or anything about AA.
Right.
So we're talking, and we haven't opened the wine. So I crack the wine. I'm smelling it. Next thing I take a sip, and then I'm off to the races. I'm drinking a bottle of wine. I'm talking to this guy, and he's
Right.
telling me, he said, I drink a lot too. I said, well, what kind of drinking you do? He goes, well, sometimes I drink so much I don't remember what I did. And I said, oh, that's an alcoholic blackout. I knew I had all the lingo down. So
Okay.
I open up the suitcase. I'm giving this guy some literature on the bus.
Oh, yeah?
Right? And he
While
says-
you're drinking the wine.
Oh, yeah, I'm drinking his wine. He's on a roll. This guy couldn't shut up. I was glad. I was drinking the wine.
Yeah, irony.
So he says, he goes on and on. Then he says, one night I drank 3 beers and I got really drunk. And I said, well, that's increase and decrease in tolerance.
Yeah, you had a
got
down
some more.
pat.
Oh yeah,
You had a cold.
I'm like the therapist. I'm 12-stepping this guy. Well, we end up getting off in Center City. I drank the whole 5th of wine or whatever we had.
He didn't have any of it.
He didn't drink any of it. The only thing I didn't give him was my AA coin in my pocket. So I get off the train, this guy off the bus, and the guys helped me get off the bus because I'm a little woozy by now.
So he's going to an AA meeting?
Oh yeah, he slapped me on the back. He goes, "Thank you, brother. I'm going to go to AA. You saved my life." And that like,
and you're drunk.
So this is
you saved his life by drinking the whole bottle.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to wait to find this guy somewhere someday. I said somewhere down Philadelphia, this guy's telling a story about this drunk guy on the bus who 12-stepped him with a bottle, drank his bottle of wine.
5 minutes to break.
So I get off this bus.
Right.
I end up in Ambler.
Okay.
Back home. Mm-hmm. From I think that was like April 10th to April 21st.
1975?
1976.
Okay.
The next 11 days are the most intense drinking of my life. I'm not going to get into all the details of fishing for ducks or any of those kind of stories you want to hear about.
I remember that, yeah.
But it was just the worst drinking for the next 11 days that I had experienced because now I had a head full of AA knowledge.
Right.
And I had a belly full of booze. And every day I tell myself, I'm going to go to an AA meeting tomorrow night. And by noontime, I was drunk every day.
Right, yeah.
I just couldn't. I thought that this thing, alcoholism, I had some willpower over this. Once I put a drink in me, I didn't realize that, this physical compulsion kicked over and I had no choice whether to drink or not. I couldn't stop.
Right, yeah.
So once this thing kicked over, I was fighting, trying not to drink, and I just couldn't. Mm-hmm. I was just drunk every day.
Where were you staying?
I stayed at I was homeless. I was living the first night home. Mm-hmm. I get home off the train and I call my mother. And I remember walking in the house, and I have a 6-year-old brother who's 11 years younger than me.
Right.
He was 6 years old at the time. And
Billy.
Billy. And I walk in the house, and there's a girl there babysitting. My mother's a nighttime waitress. She's out at the bar till 2, 3 in the morning waitressing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the girl goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Pat Gillen. I live here." She goes, "I never saw you before." So she calls my mother. My mother gets me on the phone, and she says, "You've been drinking?" I just, I guess I'm half bombed. I said, "No, I haven't been drinking." She said, "You sound like you're drunk." I said, "No, I'm not drunk." She says, "I think you are." She said, "And don't be in my house when I get home. I don't want you there."
Oh, man.
So I was homeless.
Yeah.
I was sleeping in an abandoned car. It was parked out a block away from my house, a station wagon. Mm-hmm. I was sleeping down my buddy's basement. I ended up at my sister's house.
Oh, yeah.
Coming out of a blackout after fishing for ducks all night long. And it's funny, I was in a car accident the night I was fishing for. I was in a car accident coming from a party. We were going. It was open trout season, which we just experienced last week,
right.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We're heading to go fishing at this reservoir. We get in an accident, and the guy driving, he's taken away in an ambulance. Somebody else was taken away. I ended up with these 2 guys in Philly I never met before. They were at this party, and we're going fishing with.
Right.
So we have tackle boxes and fishing rods, and you can't fish for fish until 8 in the morning because that's illegal. Mm-hmm. So we decided to fish for ducks.
Right. That's not illegal.
No, that's not illegal. So we put bread on these hooks, and we were fishing for these ducks, and they'd get on the hook, and you were reeling them in the air. They were flying in the air. Now, I have a couple friends that are animal lovers. I'm sorry if this offends you. Mm-hmm. But we were fishing for these ducks. And
oh, man.
From there, I end up coming out of a blackout
right.
in my sister's house in her kitchen.
Okay.
And she said, "You can stay here, but you can't drink anymore." And for the next day, I tried not to drink, and I was sick. I had the shakes, and I needed a drink. And the next night, I went from Glenside to Ambler, mm-hmm. and I met my friend Eddie. And I wasn't going to drink. I was standing on the corner, no intention of drinking. Out steps from the bar, my brother. Now, I didn't tell you the story. When we were at my sister's house, my brother was there, and he was a heroin addict at the
mm-hmm.
time. And we got into an argument about, "You're a dirty alcoholic. No, you're a scummy drug addict. I can stop drinking anytime. I can stop shooting dope."
The pot calling the kettle black.
He wasn't going to shoot dope, and I'm done drinking. We made this pact.
Right.
Well, he steps out of the Wyndham Hotel, and I looked in his eyes, and I could tell
you were across the street, right?
I could tell he was shooting dope from across the street. He got in the car. We said no words, and he drove away.
He was all glaze-eyed.
I turned to my buddy Eddie. Said, "Where can we get a drink?"
Right.
I felt like our pact was broke or whatever.
Right.
I was an alcoholic looking for a drink.
Well, look, we're going to come back to the Wyndham Hotel in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break here. I want to remind everybody that you can go to the donate page. Steve, you want to tell everybody about that for a minute?
Well, the donate page is right there on the North Star Radio website, and if you click it, it will take you to a PayPal site. If you are a member of PayPal, then you can quite easily donate. If you're not a member, It costs you nothing to sign up, and you can use your credit, your debit card, or you can even make a donation from your bank account. It is totally secure. You don't have anything to worry about. I've used PayPal for years and years. I've never had a problem, never had an issue. The beauty of this is that North Star Radio is strictly a free broadcast. There is no commercial breaks in the programming. There are no subscriptions. There is nothing that anyone has to pay. It all comes as a labor of love from our producer and the owner of North Star Radio, Daniel Davidson.
Hey, Daniel.
And the beauty is that you can make a donation, and 100% of what you donate goes toward the operating expenses of North Star Radio. Now, there are a variety of operating expenses, from internet expenses to computer expenses to other equipment and upgrades that come along. And this is a great radio station. If you're listening to us now, you know that already. There is great music programming throughout the day, and it's nice to be able to listen and not have to be interrupted by all these commercials.
And disc jockeys with their annoying voices.
That's exactly right.
Like mine.
And that's exactly right. I was thinking that exactly. And the beauty of this is that North Star Radio, all of the original programming, all of the music that you hear comes to you free of charge. So if you can donate, and we're not talking about hundreds of dollars. If you make a $20 donation, truthfully, if 10 or 20 of you make a $20 donation, that makes a dramatic impact on North Star Radio.
It sure does.
So help us out by just making a small donation. The price of a pizza each month keeps North Star on the air.
Exactly.
So just help us out and make a donation, and do it right now. Even while you're listening, you can go back to the website, you can go to PayPal, and that donation will go a long way to keeping this station on the air.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Yeah, we got 220 people listening in right now on North Star. And, of course, when we last left off, Pat, you were describing to us how you'd gotten out of rehab, ended up 12-stepping a guy, him marching out to an AA meeting, you getting blasted, getting thrown out of your mom's house, and nowhere to go. You made an argument pact with your brother. You were fishing for ducks. How many ducks did you get, by the way?
I don't know. More than I'd like to count.
Yeah, okay. And then the next thing, you saw your brother, and he was glaze-eyed because he was a junkie, and you were drunk, and you figured he broke the pact, and so he got in the car, took off, and you talked to another guy, and you guys went off to go get a load. What happened then?
Well, I just want to backtrack one thing.
Okay.
It's kind of the guy that was driving the car tonight went fishing for the duck, Frank.
Right.
A couple weeks ago, I was with him at an international AA convention.
Oh, is that right?
Which is kind of neat. We were talking about.
He remembered the ducks.
Oh yeah, we
How could you
remember
forget?
the whole story. Well, he was in the hospital. He wasn't fishing for ducks with us. But anyway, I'll get back to the Wyndham Hotel. My brother Tom steps out of the bar.
Right.
Gets in a car, and we looked at each other. No words said. Just looked at each other. He drove away right away. Asked my friend Eddie, "Where can we get a drink?"
Right.
We went to his grandparents' house. I got him out on the front porch, and they were two Irish people to talk with brogues, and I could hardly understand what they were saying to me.
Right.
But I was causing a ruckus on the front porch while he snuck in the back door of their house and stole a fifth of whiskey out of their cabinet. So now we sit behind a Bell Telephone building, and we drink this fifth of, I don't know what it was, Seagram 7 or
something,
whatever. But this fifth of whiskey, we drink it. And the next thing I know, I'm in a blackout, and I come out of this blackout. Now, I'm aware of what blackouts. I always thought blackouts, when I lost my memory, was that I had such a good time. I don't remember what I did last night. Even though near the end of my drinking, I had people saying, you did this last night or you did that. And I was like, nah, not me. I would never do nothing like that. So anyway, I come out of this blackout. There's red and blue lights behind me, and I'm on the Schuylkill Expressway.
Oh, my.
And I'm looking around this car that I'm in. I'm driving.
Did it look familiar?
It looks a little familiar to me. And I realize it's this 68 Rambler that I stole 100 days prior that I went to the rehab.
You stole the same car.
I stole the same car again. Same people's car.
All right.
So I'm driving, and I figure, all right, I got to lose these cops on the Schuylkill.
Good luck.
Good luck, yeah. So I jump off of the Belmont Avenue exit, head up Belmont Avenue, turn into a cemetery.
You head up the hill, so you're at the East Mount Laurel Cemetery.
Yeah, I head into Mount Laurel Cemetery, and I'm driving through the cemetery like a madman. They're chasing me.
This is a big, old cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the oldest ones in Philadelphia.
So I jump out, and I run. I get enough lead that I can run. So I run, and the one cop I could see pulling my friend Eddie off of the fence. Now, I don't understand why they put like 10-foot fences around cemeteries.
Yeah, what are they doing?
What do they think? The people are going to break out or something? But, so they're peeling Eddie off the fence in the cemetery.
Keep you out.
Right. To keep you
And the cop who was chasing me, he must have had a couple too many donuts. He couldn't catch me.
Oh,
As
fat
drunk-
guy.
As drunk as I was. So I ran all the way in the cemetery, and the fence was like 10 foot high. I couldn't climb over it.
Right.
So I see this trash dumpster there. You know, I guess they throw the dead flowers in or whatever.
Right.
And I jump in and I put the lid down.
Right.
And I'm hiding in there.
Right.
And I can hear this drum beat. I think, who the heck's beating drum? This is like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Right.
I hear this boom, 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 boom. And I realize it's my heart pounding.
Right.
I'm saying, oh, man. I'm thinking about here I've been drinking for 11 days. I'm running from the state police, and I'm hiding in a trash dumpster.
Right.
And I started to pray.
Wait a minute. Let me back up a second. Didn't at some point while you were speeding down the Schuylkill, the state he pulled beside you and put a shotgun out the window?
You know what? I can't remember. They probably did.
Because I remember you saying that.
Remember they told me to pull over. They kept telling me to pull off the side of the road.
I remember you saying once many years ago that he pulled up alongside you, had this, and then you shouted, "Pull over! I'm going to blow your head off!" And you swerved at him, and then you peeled off as he swerved and went down the Belmont.
This is probably why they were mad at me when they eventually got me.
Right, they were ticked off.
Yeah. But I'm hiding in this dumpster, and I'm thinking about what Dick Flanagan said: jails, death, and mental institutions, people, places, and things.
Right.
It's all the AA things.
It's all coming back at you.
It's all going through my head, and I'm drunk. I'm half out of it, and I started to pray. And I said, God, get me out of this one, and I'll never drink again, and I'll go back to AA.
Right.
Now, that's the drunkard's prayer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, foxhole prayer.
Yeah, the foxhole prayer. Get me out of this one, and the lid opened.
Yeah.
I was extracted from the dumpster.
They grabbed you, pulled you out.
And the first thing the guy says, I said, what are you doing? They said, well, you stole that car over there. I said, no, I didn't. I said, I was visiting my girlfriend. I had nowhere to sleep, and I was sleeping in this dumpster. I mean, this is how insane I was at the time, right? Cops going, okay, sure, buddy, let's go. So after some choice words about his mother and whoever else and his family.
Tune him up.
Yeah, he gets me in the cop car, and we ended up the Belmont Avenue State Police Barracks. And I'm chained to this chair, with the handcuffs in.
Right.
And I'm looking, and I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of semi coming out of it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm starting to cry. And the cop says, well, late to cry, isn't it? And I said, yeah, I guess it is. I said, I think I'm losing my mind. I'm crazy. He said, why? I said, that car you have out there? He said, yeah. I said, I stole that 100 days ago, and I went to a rehab for stealing. I got drunk and stole it again. He says, yeah, something's wrong with you, kid. That was the last drink that I had. I ended up at the Youth Study Center where I used to go in Montgomery County. I'd been there many times, familiar with the facility. And
you didn't know it was going to be the last drink you ever had, though.
No, I didn't. I didn't plan on it being the last drink I had. I just didn't know. I was just at a low point in my life at 17. I just hated myself. And I think like the second or third day there, usually like they wouldn't put me in with anybody because I was like the kind of guy that like instigated and would start fights all the time.
Okay.
So I'm in by myself in my own cell, and I decided I was going to hang myself.
Really?
So I got the sheet off the bed, and I tied it around this pipe that came through the ceiling for the heat radiator system. And I hung there for about 30 seconds. Just as I got speckly and I was ready to pass out, I step up on the windowsill and I untie the sheet, make my bed back up. And I decided that night I was going to kill myself. I was going to hang myself. I just couldn't take it anymore. And it wasn't because I was institutionalized or anything. I was just tired. I couldn't see any way out of this thing.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it was a nightmare.
Right.
And that night, I remember laying there in my cell, and I'm staring up at the sheet, and the moon was coming through the window, and I'm looking and contemplating whether I was going to get up and hang myself.
Right.
I'm looking at the pipe, and next thing I know, all the cell block or whatever we're on lights up. All the lights come on, and they come to my cell, and they say, you got to move. I said, what do you mean I got to move? They said, well, there's 2 guys. We got to bed down for the night, and you're in a double cell. We're going to put you in a single down the hall.
Oh, yeah?
So they put them in my cell. I moved down to the single in the hall. There's no pipe or anything to tie my sheet to. So somebody bigger than me took care of the problem.
Yeah, right. Remove that from the equation.
Remove that from the equation. And then the next day I got some letters from people in AA.
Really?
Now, and I don't even know how these people knew where I was at.
There's people from White Deer?
This is people from Williamsport. White Deer Run in Williamsport sent me these letters, told me to, they were praying for me to hang in there. they sent me How It Works, and I taped it to my cell wall, and I would read it every day. It was like reading the Gospels to me.
Right.
And I felt some kind of hope. Somebody cared about somebody like me, but I didn't know why they cared about me.
Right.
Like, what did they want from me? I thought, I failed their program.
Yeah, what's their motive?
What's their motto? I ended up going to court, and from court...
Did you go in front of the same judge as last time?
I don't know if it was the same judge, but I remember. Here's what I do remember. I remember looking at this judge. It was like the last. I pleaded guilty. I always lied. I always said I didn't steal that car. It wasn't me. I say I stole the car. And I told the guy. He said, "Well, what do you want us to do with you?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to get sober." He says, "What do you mean you want to get sober?" I said, "Well, I'm an alcoholic."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I'd like to go back and get sober in Williamsport, where I lived." And the district attorney who was prosecuting said that I was criminally insane and that I should go to Camp Hill for 17 to 23 months and learn a lesson.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, that's what he was going to do to me. And
Camp Hill is a nasty place to go.
So he says, so I told the judge I'm an alcoholic. I said, if you send me there, I said, I'm going to become an animal. I said, I'll become part of the system. I said, I've been locked up and institutionalized, and I know what that's all about. I said, if you let me get sober, I'll be sober and you'll never see me again. And for some reason, he released me in the custody of the guy who was the cook at the rehab, a guy named Bob.
Really?
He released me to this guy, Bob.
This guy came down and got you?
My probation officer took me halfway up. We met, and he took me back to Williamsport.
Really?
From there. Now, I should have went to jail by all reasons. I mean, here's a guy.
Anybody else?
I probably would have sent the guy to jail. Stealing the same car twice in 100 days. You know what I mean? I would say, you're good luck, kid.
Yeah.
But one thing, he had all these books on his, it looked like 6 big phone books on top of his podium there where the judge was at.
Right.
And he said, do you know what these are? I said, no. He said, these are all your intakes from the age of 13 to now that you've been in the court system.
It volumes on you.
Yeah. He said, let me read. We started reading all the times, like, do you have anything to say?
Right.
And he said, here's one problem, here's another. And he went through all the things what I said at the end. I'll never do it again. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. He says, this is another one of those, I'm going to be a good boy now. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. I said, that's up to you to figure that out.
Right.
And he did release me, though.
How about that?
And the guy who became my sponsor, Bob, his story is the first story in the NA textbook.
Right. I remember you telling me that.
And Bob was a good sponsor. I remember he would give me a lot of things to do. Direction. I want you to do this when you look for a job. And if I didn't, next week he'd say, did you do this? And I'd say, well, not really. Or do I have to do this? And he'd say, well, you don't have to do anything. He said, and if you don't do anything, he said, you can go back to jail.
Right.
Because he was actually my legal guardian and my sponsor.
How about that?
Because I wasn't 18 years old as of yet.
Right.
And that was the beginning of my sobriety. I went to meetings. I remember the first time I spoke, I was 89 days sober, and I spoke at Camp Hill Prison.
Is that right?
And I remember being so grateful when I left there thinking, I should have been an inmate and listened to somebody else's story.
Right.
You know what I mean? Instead of telling my story. So I really believe that God, I don't want to turn this into but a God thing, but God was really part of my life at that point. He was trying to show his presence of...
You can turn it into as much a God thing as you want.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But, I really realized that...
nobody's going to argue about that.
I realized that, from changing the cell...
I might.
To all those things...
The heathen. Go ahead.
That God was there. And he was trying to put himself before me, letting me know that he was taking care of me when I couldn't take care of myself.
Right, yeah.
That was 36 years ago, getting out of there, moving to Williamsport. In the last 36 years, my life has just been blessed by Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, meeting someone like you, when I was sober, I don't know, I was sober, 5 years?
Yeah, 5.5. Yeah.
5.5 years, I met you. I met a lot of great people in AA. When I was 2.5 years sober, I met my wife, Susan. We've been married almost 34 years.
How about that?
We have 2 great kids.
Yeah.
We were quite insane in early recovery. I got married at 20 years old, got sober at 17.
Yeah.
I remember being 10 years sober, I had to apologize to my wife for being an absentee husband.
Really?
Because I ran to so many meetings with so many people. And
me.
And you. And,
I took
and
up all your time.
everybody.
First 5 years, man, I was at your house every night.
Everything was about recovery and going to a meeting, and I don't know what we were doing.
I remember many times we'd have projects for Saturday. We'd be outside putting a new set of brakes on your Hornet, or we'd be putting a clutch in my Monza or something. We were always doing something, and Sue would be like, "You guys want a sandwich?" You could tell she was annoyed.
And Sue would always say, "Your friend's here."
Yeah. Not Mark's here.
Most of my friends were scared to death of my wife.
I know. I love Sue. She's great. She's
a strong woman.
She was. Yeah, it still is.
You know what? We had like an infertility problem for like 10 years of our marriage. Our daughter didn't come till we were almost 10 years married. And I always felt a woman in AA, Loretta, says, "You weren't delayed. You weren't denied. You were just delayed."
Yeah, I remember Loretta.
Yeah. And that's what she said. And I realized that. Thank God that I didn't have children the first 10 years of my recovery when we were married.
Huh.
I mean, because they would have been a wreck. Because I was a wreck.
Yeah.
For AA, they have 12 steps they work.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was committed to the first step.
Right.
I knew the second step that I was insane.
Mm-hmm.
And that any kind of thinking was drawn around. When I thought of a drink, that was an insane thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that a God that I understood today could restore me to some kind of right thinking through the second step.
Mm-hmm.
And turning my will over, I still fight with that today.
Yeah, I hear you.
I've surrendered my life to the God that I understand today.
Right.
But the will part, I constantly take my will back. But I've learned that when I do, the consequences I don't usually like.
Yeah.
So I try to conform my life to God's will, which is a daily effort on my part through AA.
Yeah, me too.
They have 12 steps. They have a 4-step that you write on your inventory. I'm in the midst of one of them now. I'm 36 years sober. My new sponsor said to me last week, he said, "Well, it only took 36 years, Pat." Now, I don't tell anybody, "Hey, it take 36 years to write on a 4-step an inventory."
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to personally make amends to you
Mm-hmm.
because you came to me with your 4-step in your first couple of years, and you didn't do it through me. I don't know where you got the inkling to do a 4-step, but you did a 4-step,
Mm-hmm.
and you came to me and you showed it to me, and I said, "Oh, we don't have to worry about that." And I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if you do or don't.
Yeah.
But I owe you amends for that because I didn't follow up and follow through with that. I don't feel I've been the best sponsor A person around.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot of times it was more fellowship in the beginning than the AA program.
Mm-hmm.
Today I'm on a program of action with the program part more than the fellowship part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's two different parts of AA, I feel.
Yeah, right.
But you know what? That's what I needed to keep sober, was just going to meetings and being nuts or whatever was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's funny. I resent people to come to AA and think it's a dumping ground. When that's probably all I ever did was dump on AA with all my crazy insanity.
I know, me too.
I think one night me and Mark went to I think it was me and you. We went to a meeting and we got there 5 minutes late, so we didn't know what kind of meeting it was.
Right, over at Flower Town.
And we got a donut, we got our coffee, and we sat down, and we're looking.
It was like a midnight meeting.
Yeah, it was a midnight meeting. It was late at night, and we're drinking our coffee, and we're thinking it's a regular AA meeting.
Yeah.
And the people were going on. And I knew the chairman, the girl was chairing. And,
right.
And I knew that she was gay or a lesbian, and it didn't bother me. And But as the meeting went on, the discussion was like crazy discussions about all these sex stuff. I'm thinking, well, man, these people
what is this?
They're awful honest. So then me and Mark at coffee break are drinking our coffee, or eating our donuts, going, you know what these people are talking about?
Yeah.
So when they start the meeting back up, they said, oh yeah, we'd like to start the meeting back up and welcome everybody to the Dignity Gay meeting.
Yeah.
And me and Mark looked at each other, and I put my hand up right away because I knew half the people in the room.
Yeah, right.
And I said, my name's Pat, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not gay.
Right.
I said, me and Mark just came to this meeting. Not that I got something against gay people, but I don't want anybody saying, yeah we seen Pat at that meeting.
Yeah, with his pigeon Mark.
Yeah, pigeon Mark. So, there's a lot of funny things that happen in AA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot.
That really clears up a lot.
I was one of the speakers in 1990 at the World Convention.
Really?
The 55th convention of
Is
AA.
that right?
Yeah.
In Akron?
Yeah, Sue was. This was in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, the World Convention.
Yeah, the
International.
international.
Not
convention.
Founders Day, but
the international.
Okay,
convention.
yeah.
Sue and I went there with Catherine, our daughter, who was 2 at the time.
Huh.
Just a lot of rewards in AA. A lot of good people in AA that really gave strength. My sponsor, Ed, who was with me for 20-some years.
Ed, yeah. He's a great guy.
Just, your friend Bobby you talked about in the beginning. He committed suicide in 1982.
Yeah.
Shot himself through the head. He couldn't stop drinking.
Yeah.
Kept going back. My brother Tom,
Mm-hmm.
he and I got sober in 1977. He ended up in Williamsport.
Right.
Another God moment. I came home and I 12-stepped him in the Wyndham Hotel.
Right.
Him and his girlfriend were living there, and I'm sober 6 or 8 months. And I said, if you want to stop drinking, you can just come to Williamsport, and I'll help you. I
Right.
wanted to give it away. And one night I stepped out of the AA meeting on a Friday night, the YMCA,
Mm-hmm.
and as I stepped out to the corner, his car pulled up to the corner. He didn't know where I lived or where he was going to find me in Williamsport. He just knew I lived there.
Right.
And I look at then as God directing him and me. We just met right on the corner as he was driving to town with him, his cat, and his girlfriend. And he got sober in 1977, but he's been in and out of AA for
His whole life.
35 years.
Yeah.
Right now, he is he's out of it. He lives in a group home, and not a group home, but the Lamb Foundation. It's like a place where they shelter you and they feed you every day.
Is that right? He's
Yeah,
gone, huh?
He's gone. He doesn't know what tomorrow is or what he had for lunch or who's taking him. If he goes to an AA meeting, he doesn't know who's picking him up.
He was primarily a heroin addict,
He
wasn't
was
he?
a heroin. He was a drinker at the end. He was a
Right.
big time alcoholic.
Yeah, yeah, no question.
Booze brought him to his knees.
Right. I always loved your brother.
Yeah. Again, I love my brother too, but I just can't handle, what he brought on himself.
Yeah.
I met my father in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
When I was sober, I guess it was like October of '76. I was sober 3 or 4 or 5 months.
Right.
And I came down to visit my mom, and 2 of the guys I were with were from Lansdale, and they wanted to go to Harvey's Lounge. And I was 18 then. I said, well, I don't think I should go to Harvey's Lounge. Dropped me off at the AA meeting in Fort Washington.
Right.
And I remember sitting in the room, and as I looked across the room, I seen these 2 drunks with their heads next to each other on this little couch sitting there, and I'm thinking, that's my dad.
Wow.
Now, this is 1976. I hadn't seen my father since 1968.
Really?
So it was 8 years later. And I'm looking at my father, and I knew what kind of drunk he was. And I went over and I said, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he got up and he was crying and teary-eyed. And, I've been looking for you. I said, well, we've been in the same house for the last 8 years up the street there. You didn't have to look very far.
Yeah.
And the other guy who was with, all my dad's drinking buddies were always my uncles.
Right.
I had more uncles than I could count. So him and Uncle Gene were like bombed out of their minds. And he got sober about a year later in '77.
Is that right?
And he stayed sober for 12 and a half years till he died of lung cancer in 1990.
Right.
He was 12 and a half years sober, 58 years old.
I remember
young.
that, yeah.
So there's been a lot of blessings, a lot of healings there.
Mm-hmm.
I hate being an orphan. My mom's gone. I really hate that my mom and dad are both gone, and I hate feeling like an orphan.
Yeah.
Getting older in AA.
Mm-hmm.
I love my family though. My
Yeah.
kids. My daughter's 23 and she's in her master's program for speech pathology.
Right.
She's going to graduate next year with her master's. And my son Tim is in.
Well, Tim's an interesting story.
Yeah. Tim is an interesting story. Tim is adopted. My son.
Mm-hmm.
He came in 1993. Sue and I tried to have children for years and years, and we had a lot of miscarriages, a lot of misfortunes that way.
I remember all that. It was very painful.
Yeah,
for
you were there when we went
Yeah.
through a lot of that.
Mhm.
And we decided to adopt, and when we went to adopt, we were in the process, and I came home from work, and Sue and I were trying to have a baby through in vitro fertilization, and we tried previous attempts, and it always failed. And guy in AA came to my house one day, and he said, we want you and your wife to try this in vitro thing again. Now, I'm sharing some personal stuff here, and I hope you don't mind that.
No, go ahead.
A guy I met from Williamsport that came down, and I was his contact person. He came to me, and he said, my wife and I, my business is doing booming. He said, I want to pay for you and your wife to try this in vitro again. And I said,
Really?
I can't take that kind of money, and we're kind of done with it. The emotional part, it's kind of hard for us.
Yeah, right.
But we did it. We did the in vitro, and again, from doing it multiple times, we thought it wasn't working, and we were going to a convention in the Poconos for a
Right.
general service, and it was a Friday, and we were packing up, and we just had our blood test that day to see if we were pregnant or not. And I remember the phone rang, and my wife was in the back bedroom crying. She thought it didn't work, and this and that, and she was upset, and the phone rang, and it was a nurse, and she said, I want to tell you have a positive pregnancy.
Really?
And I remember saying, what? My wife could tell by my tone of voice that something good happened, and we were crying, and we both went to the convention that weekend, and I got to speak at the God Eyes Understanding meeting and share that little, just how God works through AA and people and the whole thing there. And we have my daughter from that.
You must have been walking on clouds.
Oh, And we had to call the adoptions agency and put off our adoption. We were in the midst of adopting at the time, and we waited for like 3 or 4 years later when Catherine was about 3 or 4.
Right.
We went back into the adoption process, and we adopted Tim, who was from Korea, and Tim came to us when he was 4 months old in 1993.
Right.
And he's 19 now. He's a great kid.
I remember you telling me about because you said something to me. Can you imagine if God's sense of humor? I was such a bigot like me, and he gives me a kid that's Asian.
It'd be like, I was like an Archie Bunker.
You were a total Archie Bunker.
That was my biggest fear. And even adoption is a big fear, But you know what? I think of my kids like they're both my children. And I think of all children. All children are adopted in some sense or another to you.
Right.
I only have Tim and Catherine for however long I have them to send them on their way. So whatever I can give them in life that they're going to be able to carry on is what I can do for them.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'll tell you, my wife and I adopted a little boy about
16 years now, right?
Well, he's 15 now, and we got him when he was about 18 months old. Okay. And adopting a child is certainly an amazing journey.
Oh yeah.
And our son is Afro-American, and yet when I look at him, that is my son. That is my boy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, I was going to fight one time because he didn't get thrown off the baseball team, but he didn't get accepted. I didn't realize they cut people.
Yeah, right.
Man, I was like ready to fist fight a couple baseball coaches because he didn't get on the baseball team. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
And the guy picked.
I can really relate to that.
And the guy picked his kid with the school with rather than the kids on their talent. I felt, but I remember like really getting into that. Like,
yeah, defensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's my boy. What are you doing? Yeah.
But my kids are great. My wife and I, on the way out, I forget, we weren't arguing on the way out, but what did she say? Something, we had some words. She said, give me a kiss. I said, no, you got onions on your breath. I'm not going to kiss you because I hate onions. So she came, and as I was going to the door, she turned and gave me a cheek instead of her lips. But, you know what I mean? It's great. Life is great.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I have turmoils in life. About a month ago, I was in I'm 30-some years sober, and I'm in a fist fight at work.
Oh, yeah? What was that
Can
about?
I tell you that story? A young guy in AA trying to give him a hand, trying to help him out.
All right.
Got him a job.
They're always a pain in the neck.
Yeah, 6 months sober.
He's got it all figured out.
But he had it all figured out, and I kept I guess I was browbeating him.
Right.
What are you doing? Do it this way. Do it that way. I work construction.
Yeah, you were a concrete laborer for most of your life.
Yes.
I remember Pat's Pennies. Remember Pat's Pennies? Pat worked down Vine Street when they excavated. It was an amazing project back in the 80s. They excavated what was a vine and I forget what else, but it was canyons. They'd excavated out everything, gone down like 2 floors, put up all these retaining walls, and then they re-poured like the subway. And then Pat was doing the concrete. And you would, whenever you poured concrete, you'd take out pennies for that year, and at the corner of the pads of each intersection, you'd press a penny into it, and they were Pat's pennies. I remember you taking me down the city once. You'd take me all your favorite.
Can I show you any? Whenever they pour curbs, I'd always put a penny in there and brush off the top of it. So
right.
There's a bunch of pennies down in the curbs.
Yeah, 1983 or 4 or whatever it was. But you did a lot of concrete work for a lot of years.
Oh, I'm doing decks. I work for a company out of Malvern, and we do restoration work right now. I'm doing this parking garage deck repairs, and this guy, I'm like browbeating him all day long.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd been with me for about a month or so. And he came over and put his fingers in my face.
Uh-oh.
When you put your fingers in somebody's face and you ask them to get them out and they don't, I don't know where I come from. The fight has already started. Mm-hmm. So I shoved him to the. now we're standing on a rebar mat, mind you. This rebar mat with number 5 and 6 heavy steel bars.
So you don't have good footing.
Not good footing. And I said, if you want to fight, let's go over in a concrete and fight. Well, I shove him to the ground. He tackles me. I get him in a headlock. Give him a couple of shots. He knocks me down. I whack my head. Got a scar on my head here.
36 years sober.
36 years sober. Then he's choking me and giving me rabbit punches, and I was a mess. Then he called my boss and told him, I beat him up, or I pushed him down. And
right.
My boss, I had 3 days off of work, and he says, this is the first time in 35 years of business we ever had a fight. And I said, no, it's not the first time you ever had a fight. It's the first time anybody ever called you and told you had a fight.
Yeah.
I said, let's clarify that. I said, because I've been here for 4 years with you, and I know there's been more fights than this one.
Right.
But, I made my amends process, and I had to call the guy after a couple of days, and apologize for my action.
Right.
And, typical 6 months sober, which I resented, was, you better do something about your problem and this and that. And, he had no intake on it was none of his fault. And I was fine with that, and it took me a while to get through that. Because, but, my AA thing tells me not to I can't hold on to that kind of resentment or dislike of anybody. So I made my amends. We met at a coffee shop and a couple of days later, and it was done with. I haven't seen the guy since. And I did my part. That's what AA tells me, to make amends for something if I harm someone. I'm not responsible for your part of the amends.
Right.
What I did wrong. And I admitted my wrong, and I moved on from that.
Right.
That's what I got from being sober. Now, if I wasn't sober, I would have just held on to resentment and probably went and blew his house up or something.
And got blasted.
Yeah. So, that's kind of where I'm at in life. I'm
still a process.
I'm still working. I've been working 33 years now.
Right. I remember back in the 80s, you were contemplating going to school. You were thinking about being a lawyer or something, weren't you?
I would have liked to have been a lawyer. I would have been a good lawyer.
You're good at arguing.
If I would have been trained well, I left my 11th year of high school with bracelets on. They called me out in the hall. When I got in the hall, there was 2 detectives that grabbed me, put handcuffs on me, and took me out of school.
Right.
So that was my last day of high school, and I'm part of my. I've joined on Facebook my graduating class of '77.
Oh yeah.
Even though I was taken to jail in '75.
Right.
But I still consider myself graduating.
Well, yeah. I feel the same way.
I had to wait to take my GED because I couldn't take a GED until my graduating class graduated.
Right.
And I took it and I passed the GED, and it was probably harder than most of the graduating classes test.
Yeah.
But I'm on Facebook as a graduate, even though I didn't get a diploma from the high school or any of that. And most of the things they want to do are related around bars, and there might be a couple of them listening tonight.
Right.
If they looked on Facebook. So, I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I'm also on Facebook with some of my people from St. Benedict's in Philadelphia from before 1969.
Is that right?
Yeah, if they remember me. So I don't know if that's part of some kind of reminiscent thing I'm going through.
I do the same thing. Look, I didn't graduate from State College Senior High. I moved away the last year. My dad said, look, we got to get you out of here. You've been getting into too much trouble. Yeah. It was like every other weekend I was going in front of the magistrate, and he always got me off. And he said, well, why don't we just move down to Jersey Shore? And then we moved into Warrington, and I ended up graduating from CB East by the skin of my teeth. But I always considered myself a graduate of State College because that's where I spent my whole life. And I knew a whole lot of people from there. So, I go to the reunion stuff, and, well, I haven't in a long time now, but I go to them anyway. And they don't know that I did. They don't think, oh, yeah, you didn't actually graduate with us. But I don't really care. I
don't know if they would have remembered if I graduated with them or not. I think they probably know.
Yeah.
I feel like a poser.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, life is good today. It really is.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up on our last hard break, and I'm going to light my cigar. The pause that refreshes. And before we do, I want to remind everybody that the Rally for Common Sense is coming up next month. That'll be on May 19th. That's out in Missouri. You can go to rallyforcommonsense.org. And Kim Parrish has put this all together. And this is an event that you want to get behind. It was given the nickname by local Tea Party groups who have held small events there since 1910. This farmland nestled in the rolling hills of mid-Missouri provides a perfect setting for this unique event. It's conveniently located just 6 minutes north of Jefferson City and within easy driving of 2 airports. It naturally lends itself to barefoot patriots pursuing life, liberty, and happiness. The sun and blue skies above us, our feet planted firmly on the ground. So go to rallyforcommonsense.org and you can still get tickets. There's still some left. They're only $10 a piece. I got mine. Also, I want to remind everybody to go to the donate button and make a contribution to North Star Radio. Help keep the music that you've been enjoying and the programming that's been free alive. And I want to also make another announcement that Loving, Caring, Sharing is going to be taking a hiatus. And that is simply because we'll be relocating Loving, Caring, Sharing Studios. We just don't know where. So stay tuned, and we'll bring you all up to speed on that as soon as there's some information to give you. Let's see, Pat... You were gonna. We were during the break. We were talking about a couple of things that maybe we kind of moved over. We didn't really touch on very much. You were talking about your wife. How did you guys meet?
We met. My wife was one of my sister's girlfriends. Believe it or not, when I used to hang out in front of the bar, not that I drank in there, my wife used to. She had a bike like the Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah.
Like Toto with a basket on the front, and when she'd come by, we would like do the song from the Wizard of Oz. Dun, 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 dun. She would come by on her bike, and she'd look at us and laugh, and we'd be in front of the bar. And she says she always liked me.
Oh yeah.
And she was in my sister's wedding.
Okay.
And we went to the wedding rehearsal party and the dinner and all that, and I met her, and we kind of liked each other, kind of hit it off. And I think it was the wedding rehearsal party.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think how long I was sober. Probably about a year and a half then.
Okay.
And when they
where was it? Was this down in Ambler?
No, it was in Ambler. It was at the Aloha Inn or something over there.
Okay.
And they served us dinner at the reception, and they gave me beef with some kind of wine sauce on it.
Okay.
And when I tasted the wine sauce, I drank a lot of wine at the end.
Right.
And it tasted like the wine, and kind of set off this mental obsession that I should have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a strange environment, people drinking, and
right.
I remember I turned to my brother-in-law Ed, who was going to be my brother-in-law, and he knew how I drank and the stuff that I was doing when I drank. And I said, Ed, I'm going to order a drink. And his eyes got big as the saucers on the table, and he said, "Don't do it here. You're going to drink. Don't drink here.
That'll be the end of this party."
This party really get lively then, right? And every time the waitress would come, I kept thinking I'm going to order a drink. She kept saying, "Do you want something to drink?" And I'd say, "A Coke," and she'd bring a Coke, and I kept thinking I'm going to order a drink after I get done this one.
Right.
Again, I went out to the phone, dialed the phone, got to the last number, hung up. I couldn't call somebody about my problem,
right?
Or I'm going to have a drink. And I turned to my wife, who was my sister's girlfriend, and I said, I'm thinking about drinking. She said, "Oh, you don't want to drink? Come on, let's dance."
Yeah.
We started dancing, and I kind of forgot all about that. We got goofy, and we were out dancing on the floor and having a good time. And I got through not wanting to drink.
She helped you through.
She helped me through. But the date that I had was one of the bridesmaids.
All right.
And she told me it would be okay to have a drink, and she'll keep an eye on me. And that kind of made sense. Yeah, you'll keep an eye on me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I didn't drink that night.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And,
yeah.
and I think we started dating then, and my wife would come and visit me sometimes on the weekend up in Williamsport when I lived there.
Okay.
And I moved away like a year and a half later, and we got married in September of '78.
That's not right.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been 30. Come up with 34 years.
You don't hear about people staying married very long anymore.
Yeah, we've never split up, and we've had our arguments and disagreements, but we've never split up, and we've been mad at each other.
She's put up with you all this time.
You know that, and you know what? I think we were like two injured birds, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I introduced her father at Alcoholics Anonymous later on.
Right.
Harry. You
Harry. I remember Harry. I loved Harry.
Yeah, I loved him too.
I remember we went down to South Street one night, all three of us.
Oh yeah, that's when he ordered
got
the
ice
ice
cream?
cream. Yeah, we went to this ice cream store, and Harry, he thought everything was for free.
Yeah, right.
And we went through the line. Everything's 75 cents you put on your ice cream, and we're sitting there eating the ice cream. And it's like $4.50 for these ice creams, and this is.
He got like a $9 cone.
Oh, it was like 12. He ordered this Sunday, and the girl kept saying, "Do you want this?" Yeah. Just more is better.
Yeah, it was turning into like an ice cream sundae.
Oh yeah, he got up to the end of the line. He had this thing of ice cream. It was like $12. And the whole thing was like $12 for this thing of ice cream. It was funny. You know what I mean?
Harry was a very simple guy.
Do you remember he used to go bowling with us?
Yeah.
He would throw the bowling ball down the lane. It never touched the lane. It would just knock the pins down.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this guy was like
he was a bruiser.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had this big scar down his face.
Yeah. He was in a bar one day drinking, and a guy that was trying to cut his wallet out of his pants.
Right.
And he caught the guy, and the guy had a straight razor you shave with.
That's right.
And gashed him right from his forehead all the way down through his nose, through his lip, and his chin.
Yeah, but missed his eyeball.
Yeah, missed his eye.
Wow.
So he had and I think he went and got sewed up by a dentist. I think a dentist.
And it looked it.
Yeah, it looked it. Yeah. So he was a mean looking dude if you looked at him.
He did. He was a scary looking guy. I remember the first time I met him. You introduced us, and I thought, "Jeez."
He had a great heart, though.
He did. He was a sweetheart of a guy.
loved his
I was sad
kids.
when he passed away.
Yeah. I took that hard.
I remember. I remember you telling me about that, and I felt brokenhearted for you. And so,
yeah. He was a great guy.
Well, when we got back in the old days, because that's how I look at it now. I mean, AA has changed in so many ways, in my opinion. Now they have the traditions, which are supposed to keep AA intact, and up until I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but maybe up until like the late '80s, everything seemed to be pretty much AA was like staying the way AA was. There was no big changes and goofy. I remember these NA guys I was hanging out with. They wanted to have everything all different. You remember I was living with those guys, right? I was sober about a year, and I moved in with these guys, and they're all NA guys, and they were nice guys, but they were goofy, and they were in the middle of writing the AA or the NA Big Book. And so they're getting all these stories together, and they'd have these conventions at our house. And I'd come home on a Friday after work, and there'd be like 30, 40 cars parked outside. I'm like, what is going on? And I'd walk in, and they'd be having all these people. They'd be flocked all over the place. They'd be, singing these goofy New Age songs and stuff. It was just really out there. It was like a bunch of hippies that like got sober. And but nothing else changed, and they all went skinny dipping together, and they're just really bizarre behavior. And I remember like they were reformulating the Lord's Prayer, which you'd always say at the end of an AA meeting, and they changed it to I forget what it was. It was some dopey thing, oh yeah, give us this day our daily strength.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember I said that at a Lansdale meeting with you one night. I'm standing there, Ross, and I said, give us this day our daily strength. And as soon as it was over, you looked at me and you said, I'm a Christian, and you're making a mockery of a prayer that wasn't given to us for us to go around and mess with it and make it the way we want it. He said this is the way that he set for us to say it. And I got a problem with you saying that. And I thought, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Because, little by little, I've noticed just in AA, there's been like, I don't know, goofiness creeping in. And
people want to change things, and it's all about being. When I got sober in Williamsport,
right,
and if you were like talking some crap at the meeting,
right,
somebody told you to shut up.
That's right.
Or somebody said, this is why you're feeling that way, stop doing it.
Yeah, I remember one night you and I were at a meeting, and some guy talked some real nonsense. It was just idiocy. And the guy that was speaking that night only had maybe like 6 months of sobriety, so he didn't know how to address the guy, really. And he thanked him for sharing, and then you stuck your hand up, and you pointed at that guy, and you said, that guy's going to get drunk. And everybody there was like, And Pat laid it out. You laid it out for why this guy was going to get drunk. And the guy did get drunk, by the way. He ended up getting drunk. He came back later, we found out. But the reality was nobody. I remember going to sobriety group, and back in the day, there was a motto in AA. You remember it well. The men go with the men,
women with women,
and the women go with the women. And that was the rule, because there's too much hanky-panky going on in our heads, as it were, and you don't be mixing that stuff up. I remember outside sobriety group one night, Pepsi Mike, Mike B, and Farmer Mike were talking to some guy in the parking lot who was hitting on one of the girls that was just getting sober. And they said, if you don't knock that stuff off, you're going to have some real problems. This guy said, hey, it's a free country, I can do what I want. And Pepsi Mike went over to his trunk, he opened it up, he pulled out a tire iron, and he said, you're talking about my sister. He said, you're messing with my sister. He goes, that's a sister? He goes, anybody in AA who's a woman is Mike's sister. And this guy like jumped in his car, took off, peeled out of the parking lot, and we stood there looking at each other. And Mike was like, he was ready to cream the guy, all right? Because we took it very seriously. If you went to groups, you remember Young Men's.
Yeah.
Young Men's was a hardcore. This is a place that like, if they tried doing Young Men's today like they did then, there would be the Obama politically correct police would be there knocking the door down, telling them you can't do this.
I was at Young Men's one time during Christmas, and they did have a Christmas tree.
Right, I remember.
But it had a Nazi helmet on the top of the tree.
Right.
And there was like a wooden picture of Christ somebody put on the tree.
Yeah, all kind of junk.
Yeah, and this guy was looking at it, he was staring at the thing of Christ, and he went and he took it off the tree. And this is on Frankfurt Avenue.
Right.
And he walks over to the door and he threw it out in the middle of the tree. I said, what'd you do that for? He goes, I don't think he was an alcoholic.
Yeah. Just bizarre.
I went to what was it? Sobriety Center one night, and there's a guy down there, Mike the Greek.
Yeah, Mike, he's still around.
And he says it's a program of death and life, not life and death. Everything's backwards.
Yeah, it's all messed up.
So I took one of my brother-in-laws to AA, and I took him there, and he introduced him to Mike the Greek, and he goes, my name's Mike the Greek. And my brother-in-law, he don't know what to say to the guy. He looks at him, he goes, I'm Bruce the Catholic.
Yeah.
It just, I was saying the other day, there was an AA speaker Sunday night, and the guy was saying that, this young kid was taking the AA test. It was Johnson.
The 20 questions?
Johnson University put out this 20 questions in the 70s.
Right.
And, it's like, did you ever have a problem with your drinking? Have you ever lost time from work?
Right.
Have you ever been hospitalized? Anybody ever said anything about your drinking? And it says at the end, if you answer 1, you may have a problem. If you answer 2, you probably have a problem. And if you answer 3 of these, you definitely have a problem. But This kid's taking the test, and he's like, yes, no. He's halfway through the test, and he looks up to the guy and goes, how many of these do you have to get right or wrong? He says, it really doesn't matter how many you get right or wrong. He said, non-alcoholics never take the test.
That's really true.
You know what I mean? It's like if you're here, you're not here because you got a flat tire that came down.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah. You got an electrical problem with your car. Yeah.
Today in AA, there's a lot of people going in and out of AA.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
I have a big concern for that.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to AA, it was a matter of life or death. If I drank again,
mm-hmm.
I was probably going to spend the rest of my life institutionalized or end up killing myself or killing somebody else.
Right.
That was the importance in AA. Today, it's like, well, that guy just went out and he came back and nothing happened to him or her. It's just a revolving door, and people just keep coming in and out, in and out.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's dispiriting.
I ask them if they're done drinking when they come around. Are you done?
Yeah, right.
If you're not done, continue your drinking. When you're done, come to AA. That's what we're here for, to help you.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't like a stepping stone for
like a dry out tank
for your next binge.
Yeah.
The last 2 guys I drank with, and the last 2 guys I stole the cars with.
Right.
The first guy I stole the car with was John.
Right.
John died when I was 2 years sober.
Is that right?
He died of a methadone alcohol overdose. They found him dead in the backseat of a car at the Ambler train
That
station.
was the guy whose sister we met in AA a couple years later.
Barb,
yeah. She was a pretty blonde.
Yes, you met Barbara later on AA. And then Eddie was the second guy I stole that car with. And
That's
I
right.
took him to a rehab when I was sober, about 8 or 9 years sober. And he just never made it.
Really?
And he died in a shooting gallery in Philadelphia.
Oh, man.
When I was 15 years sober, he died.
Yeah.
So the last 2 guys I drank with died before I was 15 years sober.
Right.
There's been many more. There's a lot of them are in AA, and we enjoy the fellowship there.
Yeah.
The other ones that aren't, we're just waiting for them.
Well, yeah. Well, you remember the guy I got sober with, Joey?
Yes.
All right. Well, he and I met in rehab. He was the first guy who came up to me. Like I went, they checked me in, and then they took me down to art therapy. You make coffee mugs and you put the A symbol on them and all this nonsense. And the first, Lynn, the therapist, she says, "Joe, why don't you show Mark around?" And this guy goes over, goes, "Hi, I'm Joe, and I'm an alcoholic." And I'm like, "Oh, good for you. Your parents must be really proud of you." And I had no idea, but he and I were going to become best friends, and we ended up staying sober, getting out of rehab, stayed in touch. We both actually went back and worked at that rehab 2 years later, working on the nursing staff, and we've been friends for 30 years now. And because we worked at Fairmount Institute, we knew what was happening with the people we got sober with. When we got there were 30 people that got there ahead of us, and when we left, 30 people came in behind us. It was a 28-day program, so there were 60 people approximately that we got sober with. Every one of them are dead. Me and Joe are the only 2 that are still alive. Every single one of them died. None of them stayed sober. Yeah. Every single one of them. And statistically, Joey should be dead. Not me. He should be dead. But seriously, the odds of getting sober are very, very low. But lately, like in the last few years and stuff, I don't know, when I say few years, I'm thinking decades, actually. I'm thinking, the whole rehab thing, going to rehab's just become like the norm. You go to rehab. Everybody goes to rehab. I remember being in Fairmount Institute, talking to Ray Johnson, my psychiatrist, and telling him my problems, telling him all the stuff that's going on. And when I was done at the end of each session, he always said the exact same thing to me. He said, "Mark, if you don't go to AA when you leave here, you're dead."
Yeah.
And that's all he said. And I thought, this is $14,000 my dad spent for me to go to rehab for them to tell me to go AA. When I just told Bobby Carr I don't need to go to AA, I'm going to a rehab. What the heck is up with that? I get out and I go to AA, and everybody's talking down rehab. So I was like, oh, wait a minute. What's so bad about me going to rehab and stuff? I said, because it ain't AA. It ain't reality. You gotta reprieve for a little while. Nowadays, everybody goes to rehab, and I bump into people left and right, that have drinking problem stuff, and they're talking about they want to go to a rehab. What are your takes on rehabs, Pat? I mean, what do you think about the whole rehab issue?
I think it's a good starting place to dry somebody out and to give them some brief knowledge on AA. But after your 3rd, 4th rehab. What did we send you to rehab for?
Yeah, right.
If you didn't hear it the 1st or 2nd or 3rd time, I doubt if you're going to hear it the 5th or 6th time.
Right. Or you've already heard everything there is to hear.
Yeah, you've heard. I spoke at Eagleville one night.
Right.
And it's like a pit you speak in, like an auditorium. You're in the center of the pit. Mm-hmm. And I was like they must have thought I was taking a test. Has anybody been here before? And half the people in the room raised their hand.
Right. Yeah.
I said, any of you been here More than once? Yeah, like
all these hands.
Anybody been more than 4 times? I got up to 4 times. There was still like half a dozen people had their hands up.
Right.
I've been there before. And I said, anybody never been here? It's the first time they ever heard anything about AA
right.
or been in a rehab. And there's like 3 people with their hand up. I said, what I'm going to say tonight, I'm saying to you 3.
Yeah, right.
I said, because they already heard it. I said, for you hearing it the first time, I said, take this seriously. You don't have to come here the 4th or 5th time.
That's right.
You can get it today. It's about continuous sobriety.
Right.
Staying sober today. It's not about continuous relapsing. Relapse does happen.
Right.
But, it's not about the continuous people come back and they from a 4th time in AA in the last year. They come in, everybody claps for them. They give them a 30-day coin or a 1-day coin.
Yeah.
And they tell them to keep coming back, which is what we're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah.
But, the next day the guy's talking like he knows what he's doing. They told people when I came around, shut up and listen.
Right.
Take the cotton out of your ears and shove it in your mouth and listen.
Right.
God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you can do twice as much listening as you can talking.
Right.
And
you do just the opposite.
Now, if you say that to a newcomer today, people look at you indignant.
Yeah.
Christmas Day, I went to a meeting at a clubhouse down from my house, and some guy was there, and he says, F Jesus and F Mary on Christmas Day.
Oh, yeah?
So I turned him.
Nice guy.
Yeah, I turned him at the meeting. I said, you can't talk like that, Nay. And somebody said, he can say whatever he wants. And I said, he can say whatever he wants, but he might get a fist in his face. I said, you can't. I'm offended by that and that kind of talk here. I said, even cursing and some of this nonsense that goes on in AA today. I don't know. I get discouraged a lot of times. I got to listen to everybody's problems. I'd rather be with people that are positive and doing. I understand we have to help the newcomer. That's our main purpose.
Yeah.
Stay sober and help the newcomer achieve sobriety.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to be honest with these people.
Yeah.
We can't keep sugarcoating. Oh, it's good you're back. I say to the new person that's coming back again, what's going to be different this time than you did last time?
Right.
Because whatever you did last time, throw it out the window. It didn't work for you. You got to make some changes in your life.
Yeah.
In early recovery, they said, you have to make change. I said, what do you got to change? They said, you got to change everything.
That's right. Everything.
Everything. You can't, and then
not some stuff. It's all got to change.
We talk about half measures avail us nothing. We read that every time in our How It Works at every meeting. And people still think if they half measure it, they're going to gain something out of this.
Right.
And it's either is or it isn't.
Right.
It says in our big book, either God is or he isn't.
Right.
What's your choice going to be? You make a decision there. If you're going to follow AA and follow God's direction, then you got to do that. I mean, people today, they want to take, AA is very generic. God as I understand.
Right.
They have no Christ or Muhammad. It's God as you understand him.
Right.
They want to change it now to God as I understand God.
What does that mean?
They want to take him out. They don't want God to be a male gender, some people.
Oh, okay.
They want to, it's not him anymore. It's God as I
It's
understand.
it, yeah.
Yeah, or it, or a crystal, or a tree.
Why don't we just erase them all
A
together?
doorknob, a radiator. I said, well, really, try to rely on that radiator next time you want to drink.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't have some kind of God that you're personal with in your life today, when it comes between you and a drink and you ask that doorknob to keep you sober,
right,
you're going to end up in the bar drinking.
That's right.
Because the God of the doorknobs isn't doing it for you.
Yeah. Well, I came to know, God as I understand him in 1986, and there's a guy in AA that had been avoiding because I knew he was a Christian, and Charlie. And I'd been avoiding this guy like the plague. And one night, I asked him some questions after a meeting, and he said, well, why don't we get together on Monday nights and we'll start doing a little reading of the Bible and understand who this God is. And I started doing that, and it was shortly after that I actually came to understand Jesus Christ to be my personal Lord and Savior, and God as I understand him. And I was raised Roman Catholic, but after my parents' divorce, I didn't have to go to church anymore. So I was happy about that because I didn't like going to church. The nuns were beating the love of Jesus into me anyway, and I just didn't care for it. And so, when
they were nice to me. Come on.
Yeah, some of them were. All right, some of them weren't so nice. But the thing is after I came to know who Jesus was and I had a relationship with him, I would talk about, if somebody asked me to speak at an AA meeting, I'd say, God's understanding is Jesus Christ. And one night, Cowboy John, I don't know if you remember Cowboy John from Sobriety Group, but he was. He asked me if I'd speak. It was like last minute thing. Hey, the guy was going to speak for me. Will you speak? I said, yeah, sure. So I spoke. I spoke for about 15 minutes about my drinking, about getting sober, and then I talked the rest of the time about pretty much about how I came to understand God as I understand him. And at the coffee break, he leaned over to me. He said, "This is the last time I've ever asked you to talk at an AA meeting ever." And I said, why? He said, because you talked about Jesus. You're not supposed to say that. I said, well, it doesn't say anywhere that you're not allowed to say who your God is. I'm explaining who the God is I understand. So he started arguing with me, and after the meeting, I could tell he was pissed off at me. And I said to him, look, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I said, you go to church with me one time, all right? With me to Calvary Chapel, Philadelphia one time, and if what you hear there means nothing to you, and you meet that end of the agreement, I'll never speak about Jesus if you ask me to speak for you again at an AA meeting.
Yeah.
He said, all right. That Sunday he showed up at church. I couldn't believe it. He actually walked in. Sat down with me. Pastor Joe preached the best Bible study I ever heard. It was. I thought, if you don't get Jesus at the end of this, there is no helping you. And he did an altar call, the whole thing. Matter of fact, Scotty was there. I remember he was up there playing the bass guitar during the end of the worship. And I thought, if this guy doesn't, and he gets up, he turns to me, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and I thought he's going to say something like, I need Jesus, And he says, all right, I fulfilled my end. Now you shut up. And he walked out. About 4 years later, Calvary Chapel always does these baptisms like twice a year, where everybody can go and they get baptized if they haven't been baptized yet. And so they rent out this pool over at the health club. And I go there because Chuck and Janet were getting baptized, so were their boys. So we go, we're all supporting them. And there's like 200 people there. And I'm standing there talking with my friends. I look over, and there's this long line of people waiting for their chance to get down the water with Jerry and with Frank. And I'm like, I look over, and I'll be, doggone, there's Cowboy John. What is he doing? I go running over to him, and he has this big scar down his chest. And it was a fresh one. It wasn't an old one. It was a fresh scar. He had an open heart surgery. And I said, John. He goes, Mark. I go, what are you doing? He gave me a big hug. He said, oh, man. He said, I owe you a debt of thanks. I said, well, what happened? He said, I had to go get surgery. He said, I was laying in the hospital bed, and I was scared to death. And some guy who was like a chaplain for the hospital walked in and asked me if I would like him to, to pray for me. And I said, yeah, would you come in? We got talking. And next thing I know, he leads me to Jesus. I got out of there. The first thing I thought, he said, I came through the surgery with flying colors. It went great. He said, the first thing I did was I went to an AA meeting, told everybody what had happened. And then Noel was there. He's this other guy standing in line with him. And Noel's another AA guy I'd known for years. And I'd witnessed to him. And he was like, go tell it to Byberry. Go tell it to the mental health patients. And there's Noel standing with him. And I said, I understand what happened. He said, I told Noel what happened. Noel broke down, started crying. And he asked how to get saved. I led him in the sinner's prayer that the guy taught me when I was in the hospital. And so we're here getting baptized. I said, you going to Calvary Chapel? He said, yeah. He says, it's great. He says, I'm free, man. I'm finally free. Now, he's one of those guys, not many happen, but, that actually come to a place in their life where they realize this generic so-called God isn't going to cut it. No. It's about a personal relationship. It's not about church. It's about a personal relationship. And, over the years, I've had the opportunity to lead a couple of different guys in AA to the Lord. Mm-hmm. You remember Willow Grove Charlie? He got to the Lord 2 days before he died. And that was.
I sponsored quite a few men into the church. It's kind of nice. I'm a practicing Roman Catholic.
Right.
So we always bring our new parishioners in at Easter time and welcome them into the church and baptize them or whatever sacraments they have to receive.
Right.
I, being a Catholic my whole life, I returned to the church of my youth because I was ignorant to the faith, and I've learned a lot about the faith. But I never really felt a connection to God. I knew all about Jesus, knew all the stories, and they all made sense, but I never had a personal relationship with God.
Right.
And I don't know how. My daughter was about 6 or 7, and she would come into our bedroom at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep, and it got like for like weeks. This went on,
right?
Maybe a month, and finally we said, well, she should go to counseling. Let's send her to a counselor. Well, so we went to send her to a Christian counselor because we're a Christian family. So I find this guy, Jack Mercer.
Right. Somebody
says you should go see him. So Catherine's never seen the guy. We went and seen him. She's 7 years old.
Right.
So we go to talk about what's going on. Well, this is God's plan coming to us, and I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
So I'm meeting with this guy, Jack. Well, he brings me to the Lord, to my knees.
Is that right?
With we're in one of the sessions and we're talking. We weren't talking about Catherine anymore. We're talking about Pat now.
Right.
And he says to me, I'd sit there and eat his candy and listen to him, right? And Sue went with me a couple times. And I think I was going by myself now. And he looked at me, and Sue, I think Sue was in the room, and he says, where are you at with God? And I said, what do you mean? He said, it's not a hard question, Pat. Where are you at with God? And I started to weep.
Really?
I started to cry.
Yeah.
And I said, I feel 1,000 miles away. I well up now when I tell the story because I was unable to establish a relationship with a God that understood, because I looked at God as I looked at my earthly father as a godly father.
Right.
And I had no relationship with my earthly father ever.
Right.
And it was almost impossible for me to have a relationship with a God that I didn't understand. And you know what? it was trust stood in the way between me and my relationship with God.
Huh.
And I was 20 years sober
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
And it changed my whole life. That
Wow.
man, I mean, he brought me to my knees and brought me to the foot of the cross. And I'm ever thankful for that guy. I think our whole family had changed at that point.
Right. Yeah, I remember you sharing that with me, too. Didn't you go to, what was it, Promise
I
Keepers?
was a member of Promise Keepers for about 10 years until they disbanded.
Right. Well, I remember you telling me, you called me up on the phone and you said, who was it? Somebody had a golf shop. Was it Al?
Kevin.
Yeah, he had a golf shop, and he said, "We're doing.
We meet there.
We're meeting. We're having this.
Bible study,
You might want to come over and check it out." And I'm thinking, okay, I've been a Christian now for whatever it was at the time, 15 years. Yeah, I'll come over and I'll set you straight. And I go over, and here's these guys all sitting around, and you guys are going through, I think, the Navigators or something like that.
One of the books.
The books, and I was just astonished because it was great because it was refreshing to me to remember the basics of Jesus. And you guys were going through all this stuff, and I just remember feeling welled up inside and thinking, "Oh my God, who'd have thought?"
Now, and these are all guys in AA.
I know, yeah. Danny was there.
Yeah, Danny, and there was a friend of mine, Steve, who passed away. It's got to be 10 years now.
Right.
And he was a heavy-set guy, and he died of a heart attack like 2 weeks before he was going to get married.
Wow.
But he'd come to the Lord through Promise Keepers, and he's like a tough Italian guy.
Right.
And we were at this convention, at this conference at one of their stadium events where there's 100,000 people there.
An AA one. Yeah.
Promise Keepers.
Oh, it was Promise Keepers. Okay.
And I look over, and here's this guy, Steve, got his arms up in the air, and he's praying.
Wow.
And I just was moved by that. I mean, here's this tough guy, and when he passed away, I knew that he was in a better place.
Right.
And his life was straight at that time.
Right.
Yeah, when I first came to the Lord, I thought I was going to die.
Right.
Because I thought, all right, he's now prepared me for coming home. I thought I was going home.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of people I know that come to the Lord, they think, okay, well, what else is there?
This is what he's bringing me to. I'm coming home.
It's time to pay.
And today, God is very important in our lives with my children.
Right.
And we're a church family.
Right.
And I find it very important for us. We talk about God all the time, and different things are beliefs at our dinner table. Mm-hmm. We still eat dinner every night together, the four of us.
That's great.
I think that's all part of it, and we have prayer at dinner time, and it's just great.
Well, we've only got 2 hours have gone by again in the batting of an eye, and we've only got 10 minutes left, and I'm just wondering, if Steve or Scott or any of you guys have any comments or any questions or anything. Because I know I've been hogging the microphone.
You have.
I know. I'm terrible at it. I am. And they always get on me about it. Now, you never give us a chance to talk.
I'm sitting here listening to this and just amazed everything that Pat is saying, and I'm amazed with your journey, Pat.
Thank you. I'm amazed with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet. I'm awestruck by your story.
And of course, me being the alienator, I'm completely underwhelmed.
That's our Daniel. Yeah. Well, we have a tradition here at Loving, Caring, and Sharing, Pat. What we like to do before we wrap up the show is we always like to have the MOA, our Master of Arms, Steve Deloach, pray for our guest. And Steve, would you mind very much? Would you take a minute and pray for Pat?
I would love to do that. Father, thank you so much for the time we've had tonight with Pat. This last 2 hours has gone by so quickly, and I am so impressed not only with his journey, but with the fact that he acknowledges you through his journey. Thank you so much for reuniting your son with you. Father, help us all to know that no matter how deep we are in whatever situation we're in, that we can always turn to you. Thank you so much for Pat's story. It is my sincere prayer that those that have listened tonight will be encouraged and be edified in such a way that they'll reach out to you. Thank you so much for what Pat's done, not only with his life, but with all those that he sponsored, with Mark and with so many others. Continue to use him and bless him in your service, and just do that with all of us, Father.
Yeah.
Help us to be open to your calling. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always love prayer. I always find it so hard, you're with somebody and they're going through a turmoil, and you go, I'm going to pray for you.
Right.
And I always think you should grab their hands then and say a prayer right there. And,
I agree.
And I find it so hard so many times, but you know what? Anyone that's ever done that to me, I've been moved by that.
Yeah.
You know, when another man grabs my hand and says, let's pray on what's going on with you, Pat, and see if we can help you through this.
Yeah, real men pray.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
That's right.
I mean, honestly, so many of us that are caught up in like being, macho, or I'll pray for you. You know what I mean? To give you the patent answer. You know what I mean? Well, I'll put you on my prayer. Steve, I tell him what's going on with me, and the first thing he does is say, well, let's pray. And it's like, well, I didn't get a chance to, and Father, and he just starts praying. And I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
It breaks down the barriers. It puts things in perspective.
Well, the Father is the one that takes care of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no question about that.
No matter what our struggle is, He's the one that gets us through it.
Yes.
Yeah, we just have to acknowledge that, that he's there and it's in his hands.
Yeah.
I got to move out of the way sometimes and just let him do his work because his work is so much nicer than my work.
Yeah.
His handwriting I can understand. Mine's a little blurry.
Yeah.
It's just I really like to reach out and just say a prayer for my brother Tom.
Yeah.
And my brother Billy, who called me the other day, who's in Hershey Hospital suffering from mental illness right now, that the Lord reaches out and just clarifies his mind. It gives him some clear vision that, after 25 years of in and out of the fellowship, that God can just reach out and help him see a clear path of what he wants him to do. He wants him to be one of his children and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, Pat, can we stop just for a minute and pray for them?
Sure.
Father, Pat has asked us to pray for Tom and Billy, and you know what their situation is. We don't know, but you know. So, Lord, just bless them and give them your comfort. Remind them of your presence, and let them know that you're there.
That's right.
Amen.
Give them what they need.
Yes.
And also, Father, while we're praying, be with Mark right now. He's in the process of a move, and there's a lot of unanswered questions in the future. Help him to trust in you and to follow your lead.
Amen.
And Lord, help us all to do that.
Yes.
We're all struggling, every one of us. Lots of us look like we have it all together. Help us to know that you're the one that really has it all together. And just help us to follow you.
Yes.
In Christ's name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Well, this has been great. I really enjoyed this time.
I'm glad you did.
I was apprehensive. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I hope I didn't bore anybody.
No, I wasn't bored.
Not at all.
I don't think anyone was bored.
In the 30 years I've known you, I don't remember one time we got together ever and being bored.
No, and we laugh a lot.
Yeah.
It's fun to be sober. It's fun when a bunch of drunks get together and they can laugh about their predicaments they were in. And we can look at them and see them as past history.
Yeah. Back in the day, it was a nightmare, and you can't do anything but want to forget it.
A lot of that I was talking about, there was a lot of blame and shame there, when I was talking about my drinking. It was more than just a physical drinking. There was a lot of spiritual sickness, a lot of mental sickness, a lot of just everything all around. And I was at a deep point in my life, and God had reached out and just... He took over, when I talk about all the instances of being locked up and God just putting his hand in there, I knew that it was God because I had disbelief.
Right.
And I knew that, he knew I was a physical learner or a
visual
learner. So
right.
he visually reached out and put visual things in my life for me to see. And, even when I come home and look at my family and kids, I know that that's part of his plan. It's just visual. And the people in my life, I got a lot of good people in my life today.
Yeah.
And it's just a blessing. And it's a blessing because I've chosen to follow him.
Yeah.
And I'm not a holy roller. I was afraid when I turned my life over to Christ, I was going to become a holy roller.
Right.
Or better than them. Or,
yeah.
And maybe, I think in the beginning, you do feel that somewhat. But you know what? It's just by my actions and what I do to help other people that prove that I'm a Christian and trying to do the right thing. I just try to help as many people. Mark was there for me in the beginning, and his dad was before him.
Yeah.
When it gives you something better, it's easy to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you have any parting words for anybody that might be struggling with alcohol out there, Pat?
the guy I've been working with a guy now, working at work.
Mm-hmm.
And today he said to me, I've known him for over 10 years with a company I worked for before he worked with me. And I brought him to work with me now.
Right.
And he said, I think I want to stop drinking and go to AA. He said to me today.
Really?
And I tease him about being an alcoholic. I always say, Marty, there's a chair there tonight, or I'll tell him he can go there and meet some girls. He likes that part. But I said, Marty, if you can't stop drinking on your own, I said, go to an AA meeting. I'll take you to an AA meeting.
Nice.
But I felt moved that he'd
reach out to you.
Reach out and say that to me. And he definitely has a problem. And I don't want to call anybody an alcoholic. But,
right.
If you're suffering and you can't stop drinking on your own, reach out and ask for help, and say a prayer.
Yeah.
Ask God to direct your thoughts and your ideas, that His ideas and thoughts become yours.
Yeah.
And just help you because, and go to a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? The first thing is to put down a drink, to realize that you're powerless over alcohol. I can't consume alcohol anymore.
Right.
Go to a meeting, get a sponsor, and go to a lot of meetings at first.
Mm-hmm.
And, your life will change. I mean, there's no fun in the bar. This guy said he goes home every night, doesn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
He drinks, he gets drunk, passes out, and goes to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? I said, there's more. I said, you can have a whole life in Alcoholics Anonymous. What has brought me so much pain has brought me so much joy.
How about that?
Alcoholism brought me to my knees, and Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to stand up and walk like a man.
Amen.
And I'm just grateful for AA. And all it's done for me. If you have a problem, pick up the phone, or there's plenty of clubhouses, AA meetings. Just go.
Right.
That's all I had to say, and ask for help.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
That wraps it up for us, Pat. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Scotty, glad to have you here in the studio. Daniel, thank you for producing tonight's show. Steve, thank you for everything. You're always a pleasure to have as my co-host and MOA. And
can I just add a little something, Mark?
Yes.
It's a shame you have to take a hiatus for a little while, but can I just say it's been an absolute pleasure working with you.
That's right.
He has a real radio voice, doesn't he? I listen to him. It's like, I don't know, Walter Cronkite or somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, Daniel is like the biggest critic of himself. He always says, I can't do radio. I can't do it, mate. It's not my thing. But I think he's brilliant.
He has a great radio voice, too.
He absolutely does, yeah.
Excellent job, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, look, everybody.
Thank you.
We got to wrap it up. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I want to remind you that we'll be taking a hiatus. And we'll be getting back sometime in the near future. Look on Facebook. I'll be posting updates. And in the meantime, it's been my great pleasure to be. Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank everybody again for joining us tonight. It's been my great pleasure to host Loving, Caring, and Sharing. And I just want to say good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
God bless.